It's Thursday, October 21st, 2021. Typical October weather coming to the region as we work our way through the last 2 days of this work week and into the weekend. Really nothing extraordinary, especially over the next couple of days here. It's going to be nice today and Friday with some pretty decent temperatures and conditions. We do have a series of Pacific fronts that are going to be blasting the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest. And what will happen is the remains of what's left of these systems will come into the Rockies and the Great Basin and the Western High Plains. But what basically happens is these systems get really chewed up as they cross all the mountain ranges from the Pacific Coast to the interior West. And so you just get what's left over. This is definitely going to be a western areas of the United States event when it comes to the heavier precipitation over the next 5 to 7 days. We're going to give you an update on snowpack. Yes, is there something to talk about already with snowpack? There is. And also got some new La Nina information to show you as La Nina coming in full force. Satellite photo shows a really great shot of what is going on out in the Pacific Ocean and what's to come. Look at this beautiful swirl of a deep area of low pressure system off the coast of British Columbia. This is a very mature system, so it's basically reaching its peak strength. But you can see that it's a very well organized storm. It's going to have a lot of rain going into British Columbia and soon into Washington and Oregon. Back up here, there's another low. Basically, what's going to happen is we're going to see low pressure systems just form across the North Pacific and the Gulf of Alaska over the next 5 to 7 days. And they're just going to ride along into the jet stream and come into the West Coast. You see these clouds right here, like they look like little dots? That's a good indication of the colder water. You get clouds like that when the air is really cold over the ocean waters. And so cold air is building up here, all of that moisture, lots of jet stream energy, all queued up to come on into the west. And you can see it here analyzed on today's upper level charts. But generally a zonal flow, meaning west to east. The word zonal means generally a west to east flow, and that brings mild Pacific air into the high plains and Rockies for today and tomorrow. But by Saturday afternoon, notice what happens. The low is up here, and it basically sends out a piece of energy here, and what's left is you have a bit of a cool front that'll be coming through the area Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. But notice it's not a well-organized system. And this is where we get what's left of the storms battering the West Coast. Look how close these lines are packed together. Extremely strong jet stream winds on the backside here heading this way. So this is Saturday. By Monday, a larger piece of energy gets spun off of that big storm in the Gulf of Alaska and goes all the way down into Southern California. This is going to be the episode, basically from late Sunday through Monday and into early Tuesday, where the far west gets really wet. This system will then track eastward, but it's going to get chewed up by the Sierra Nevada, the Cascades, and the bigger mountain ranges from the divide to the west coast. And so what will happen is you have this fairly well organized system become weaker and kind of shredded up. So there'll be some weather here for Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, and the Dakotas by late Monday night into Tuesday, but mainly in the form of showers. So the West Coast mountain ranges in this type of very strong jet stream regime just takes most of the moisture. It's like taxes. You get taxed real heavily here, and after all the state, federal, local taxes, you're just not left with much here. I know that's a bad analogy, but that's kind of really how it works with this type of weather pattern. And here's the jet stream wind. As you see coming on in, very, very intense jet stream winds coming in by this weekend to the West Coast. I mean, these are jet stream winds right here going over 200 miles an hour. So imagine flying an aircraft across the North Pacific and carrying that kind of crosswind. That's the kind of wind that causes a lot of turbulence for you folks who travel overseas. Now, geek alert. Geek alert here because I'm showing you some pretty in-depth meteorological concepts here. But one thing to recognize, especially when you get into the cold season, as the jet stream gets stronger and faster, like I'm showing you right here, what tends to happen is when the jet stream winds get really, really strong, it makes the atmosphere go up. And when the atmosphere goes up, you create rain and clouds and snow. And this black line here represents that strong jet stream. So that arrow, that line, just imagine that's what I'm showing you right here. Same thing. And what will happen is in parts of the jet stream where we call it the left exit region, or basically where the jet stream has reached its max speed and then begins to slow down, you get the atmosphere to go up. One reason why it's going to be getting so wet along the west coast and into parts of the interior is a strong area of lifting atmosphere is going to be driven in by that jet stream. Also, you throw in the Sierra Nevada, you throw in the Basin and Range Mountains of the Great Basin, the Wasatch Front, the other mountains, that adds even more lift. So that's why this type of pattern is so productive to make the west, the far west, very wet. Now, on the backside of this strong jet stream winds, the air goes downward, and this is where you get the high pressure systems come in behind the storm, and this is where you get the low pressure systems forming there. So a little weather geeky, but it's always good to know where that jet stream is and where it's the strongest, because that's what drives the weather. So if I were to go back here, this represents right here a large area of lift. And that large area of lift will continue to go down the coast and inland as the strong jet stream comes on in. And then when the strong jet stream begins to leave, that's when the fair weather comes in because of that sinking motion. Okay, enough weather geekiness. This is what the next 7 days looks like when it comes to precipitation. And you can see there is a gradient, and this is something that you see sometimes in La Nina winters. There's a large gradient between the heavier precipitation here, gathered up by the mountains, and then a gradient where the precipitation gets lighter and lighter east of the divide because a lot of the moisture is scooped up by the mountain ranges. But this also is a good way to build up the snowpack. We've had La Nina winters where you can have really good snowpacks because of this type of pattern. And here it is. The snowfall forecast for the next 10 days is quite impressive, but you can definitely see the gradient of heavier to lighter as you go east. Now, let's talk about snowpack. Some of you might be saying, wow, what do you mean we're talking snowpack already? Well, as a big difference from now to where we were a year ago, where we had very little snowpack in October getting started. Well, so far, we're starting to build it up. Now, you have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. I mean, when you look at these numbers here, you see some crazy snowpack numbers like 1,400% of normal in the lower North Platte, upper North Platte, 200% of normal. Or look at this, over 1,000% of normal in the lower Green River Basin. All this means is that relative to averages, this October has put down a fair amount of snow up high into the mountains of Wyoming, Colorado, Montana, and Utah. Look at Colorado's snowpack figures. They're kind of crazy as well. You're not going to see numbers like this throughout the course of the season, but what this shows you is, yeah, this is a good start. This is a good start to the snowpack season, and let's hope it continues for water, not only in the Rockies, but for all western areas that really, really need it. Now, quick La Nina update. This is the heat content of the key area of the Pacific where we're watching those sea surface temperatures. Beginning in July, the sea surface temperatures began to drop again, and they're actually colder now than they were a year ago. So we're going to be looking at a very robust La Nina here over the next 3 to 4 months. And we just got the new computer model forecast for sea surface temperatures through the rest of fall and into winter. Anything below the zero line indicates a prediction of colder than average sea surface temperatures. This green line basically shows the average. So basically, folks, we are going to be looking at a strong La Nina, a moderate, let's say at least a moderately strong La Nina from today going forward and lasting probably through January, February, maybe into March or April. But all the modeling is showing a trend, almost all of it, of getting out of La Nina by late spring and early summer, hopefully earlier. Now, some models, there's some pretty big divergence. The European model warms up the sea surface temperatures quicker. NASA has a model that actually drops off this chart. So look at this. You have two giant disparities. That's why you got to be really careful with the modeling, folks. A lot of times it's better to run a lot of different models and average them out, and that's why you got that green line here. So La Nina is coming full force again, and it's going to play a really big role in the next 5 months with how winter goes across North America. And this is a very idealized example of what the storm tracks tend to look like in La Nina winters. You can have these all throughout the course of the winter. And one thing I need to remind folks about La Nina winters, and we saw this last winter, can bring extremes. You could have one extreme for a few weeks. It could get real warm and dry. Then you could have another extreme that's exactly opposite. You kind of have a lot of a seesaw back and forth. But one very active jet stream pattern that can happen in stronger La Ninas is this one. And this is basically what we're seeing right now. This doesn't mean this is how the jet streams will be all winter, but you'll see episodes like this. So what we have is a really strong jet stream coming in, and this is why the green here is showing where you're going to get the precipitation. This green area of precipitation right here is something that we may see, and maybe further south here, throughout the course of the fall and into the early winter season. And that'll be something we'll be keeping track of. Have yourself a great Thursday. We'll talk more tomorrow.